Hey, do you have a few moments that we could visit tonight? I would appreciate it. I'm not going to rush through this video. I'm going to talk to you about some things that are very, very important. So the good thing about it being a recording is that you can hit pause and come back and pick it up later. So if I out talk your attention span, which I have been known to do a time or two, just hit pause and come back and pick it up a little bit later. Max Lucado mentioned this morning on his video, or in his video devotion, that when this began, he felt like it was kind of like somebody picked up a big snow globe and shook it up and set it down. And all the pieces eventually will drift to the bottom, and it'll be like it was when this all started. And I think we all felt that way. I can remember saying a time or two, well, in the next week or so, we'll have a kind of a grasp of what's going on. And the longer we go, the more it looks like things are just not going to return to normal, any semblance of normality for quite a while. So I'd like to talk to you about some things today that will deal with how we have church at Relevant Church in these, it's a way overused term, but in this new normal. And don't worry, we're going to start having church again, live church in the building. So if you're waiting for that and getting impatient with that, I share your desire to get back together. Believe me, I miss you guys so much. So I just want to talk to you about how that's going to happen. First point I want to make is that I am not a believer in conspiracy theories generally. I believe at this moment, unless I am given some kind of convincing evidence, I believe at this moment that this virus came from China through some accident in a lab, I think is what they're saying, and that it has created havoc all over the world. So I'm going to take that at face value, and if there's something else going on, I'm going to pray that God will just reveal it. But I'm going to operate in the assumption that this is as it's being reported to be, and that it's not some attempt to keep us all out of church or to overthrow the government. I'm going to give it the benefit of a doubt, and I'm going to trust my God to expose it if there's anything else going on that we need to know about. So I begin with a fair amount of confidence in our scientific community, and I'm listening to them. I mean, I've watched so many videos and things about all the conspiracy theories. I understand what's being said, and I'm interested but not convinced, I guess we could say. So for whatever that's worth, I just want you to know what's guiding me in that. First thing I would really ask you, I'm going to ask you to do a few things tonight. And I'm specifically speaking to the church family of Relevant Church. I'm going to ask you to do a few things. And for those of you who have sort of joined us since we went online, maybe you just discovered us, I include you in that group. We're glad to have you. I'm going to ask you to remember that we are a community. We are a community of believers. We are a spiritual family. And that means that we're not making decisions for individuals. We're making decisions for the community. The spiritual community that is Relevant Church. And so understand that as a pastor and as a deacon board and as staff, we're dealing with the community and what's going on in the community. Excuse me. So, and also remember, that's the first thing I want you to remember, is that we are listening and talking to the church community, the Relevant Church community, and trying to map out the future based on what the community is telling us and the feedback we're getting, and also just what's in the best interest of the community as a whole. Second thing I want you to remember is that we're dealing with a potentially deadly pandemic, and we're dealing with people's lives, and I take that very, very seriously. If you've hung around me any length of time, you know, as a pastor, man, we have church in blizzards. We tear into it. we find a way to have church come what may. But we don't want on our hands the responsibility for spreading a deadly disease, a potentially deadly. I know that most people get over it fine, but we don't want it on our conscience and on our hands that we somehow help to spread a potentially deadly disease to the vulnerable parts of our church community or our community in general. So understand that we are very prayerful and very concerned about that aspect of church life and worship. So remember those things. Going into this past week, allergies are still kicking me pretty good. Going into this past week, I had a conviction. My conviction is that it would be almost impossible to do a great job of online church and do a great job of live church. I felt like that we were pouring ourselves every week into putting together the best online service we could. And judging from your feedback, I think we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, we try to have some new and exciting things, at least visually, for you on Sunday morning, so you're not just looking at a talking head. And moving along, I'm trying to change sceneries, and with the help of my brother, we've thrown in a little country twist. And many of you have expressed how much you enjoy that little change of pace. The worship teams, I'm so proud of you guys for coming in and creating a worship environment right there in the sanctuary, even when I'm off out somewhere else. So I think we're doing, based on what I hear you saying, we're doing a pretty good job of doing online church. The Wednesday night Bible study is going well. By the time those things have a few days run, we have hundreds of views of them. We'll have, I don't know, I think 20 to 30 households will tune in on Wednesday nights. Of course, you don't have any idea how many people each household represents, but 20 to 30 households is a pretty good crowd if you had them in person. Getting a lot of good feedback. I'm trying to sprinkle in video devotionals and trying to give you some beautiful scenery in the background so you can enjoy that and encourage you, and I'll keep trying to do that. So we really have poured ourselves into doing a good job on our online services. But again, this week, I sort of entered this week and looking and say, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for us to continue doing a high quality online presence and also simultaneously do an excellent job of being there Sunday morning and doing the online service there and doing a good job of it. If you remember when we first got started, it took us a week or two to kind of get our legs under us. The first week, the video did not go well at all. After that, I think we steadily got better and better at it. So, and I know I don't want to get into the technical aspect of it, but if you have a computer system that's operating in the control booth to help produce the service and to keep all that stuff going, and you're trying to also use that computer system to project a live stream out to those who are not there, we just I didn't feel like the capacity to get it all done. But Thursday night, we were having a board meeting, an online board meeting, and in our discussions, one of our newer deacons, Richard Michael Fritchie, who is quite into the technology. In fact, he spends all week, every week on his job, I think, writing code, So he was bringing to the board some ideas about how we could do both. How that we could have a service and simultaneously function in a live stream. So I have asked him, beginning this week, if he would get with Pastor Dustin. They form our IT department, and if they would start installing and testing that equipment so that we can do both a live stream and a live service right there in the sanctuary with those the brave souls who want to come. So we'll start working on that this week. Um, Now, as far as how things, remember the snow globe is settling back down. Things are not going to be the same for quite a while. I mean, you're looking at months and months, and maybe even longer than months, before we get back to a semblance of what we had before. And so let me talk to you just a little bit. I'll just take a breath here. Let me talk to you a little bit about how things will change in this new normal that is, the pandemic world. First of all, when we come back together, it appears to me that it would be virtually impossible, and I don't even think I need to use the word virtually. It will be impossible for us to offer children's church and nursery. I can't fathom a way that we can put kids in a room together and not have germs spread back and forth. So I think that is simply impossible. So when we resume services, we will have to resume them without nursery and without children's church. And I know that is a very big challenge. If your children have never sat through an adult worship service, you may be saying to yourself, that would be unmanageable. And it will. It will for some families. It simply is going to be a situation where, the little guy and the little gal is just not going to be able to handle it. I will try to keep that in mind and do my best to maybe condense the service somewhat, because I know their attention span is going to be very short. But I don't often have a great deal of luck trying to be short-winded. No comments, please, on that one. But I'll keep that in mind. So that will create a problem for some of you, and I know it. I know that it would be very difficult for you to come and wrangle your kids through an adult worship service. But there's just I can't think of any solution to that. So. But, and I believe in children's ministry. I absolutely believe in what Pastor Tammy's doing. I believe in what the nursery workers are doing. But not all is lost. I hesitate to say this because I don't want you to take it wrong. I'm a product of a church that never had a children's program of any kind. Not that I think that's a good idea, but the church I grew up in, and my cousins and friends, we all went to the adult service. We all worshiped together, and if we got bored, we took a nap. And so I think I'm living proof that you can survive without a specific service for the kids. In fact, there may be times when there are even some positive things to kids seeing their mom and dad worship and being in the environment where their mom and dad is worshiping. So, while I believe in children's ministry, absolutely, all is not lost. People can survive even if they have to worship as an entire family in the sanctuary. But I know if you've got a kid that's basically going to come unglued and disrupt everything, that's going to be a real problem for you having church, and you probably would not be able to take advantage of that. The second problem we have is many of you that have written me said you're going to hang back a little bit, and that means you're not going to jump in right away. You're going to kind of see as people start eliminating the precautions whether this thing spikes again. And I kind of have a feeling, this is not scientific because I'm not a scientist, but I kind of have a feeling that in the next week to 10 days, we're going to learn something. Because my impression is that about a week ago, Liberty sort of came out of quarantine. There were huge lines everywhere. Traffic was a disaster. I shouldn't say disaster, but traffic was a problem again for the first time in a long time. So it tells me that people are getting out of their quarantine, and they are, running around mixing it up. So if this thing is as bad as the scientists are saying it is, we should have a major spike in about a week. And if we don't, that's good news. It means that we can, somewhat be together and not pass it all around. So I'm really looking at that. I'm really going to be listening to what goes on about a week, because I think it was about a week ago today, and I'm taping this. Let me check my date. I'm taping this on the 16th, May the 16th. So about a week ago, that would have been May the 9th. People came out of quarantine. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. If we don't get a spike, it's very good news in my opinion. If we do, we all have to back up and reevaluate what we're doing. But many of you have told me that because you are an at-risk person, and I'm an at-risk person, I've got asthma really bad, so I have to be real careful. And some of you have elderly parents that live with you, so you've got to be real careful. And so, if the nursery thing takes out a chunk of parents, and then the at-risk takes out a chunk of our older folks, you can see there's only this little slim path through the middle of the church that are even open to having church in a live way. And we're trying to consider all that, and I'll get more on that in just a moment. So I've got Richard Michael and Pastor Dustin queued up. They will start this week trying to get the equipment installed so that we can do both online and live services simultaneously. When we do come to church, we will have to, well, we don't know what we'll have to do, because the government says this, and then it says this, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. So we will just check what the Liberty and the Clay County guidelines are at that time, and obviously we will do our best to comply with those. Some of you remember that I understand that a little while back the mayor of Kansas City said we had to register and send in the names and addresses of everybody who comes to church. We won't comply with that. We're not in Kansas City anyway, but when church worship services start having to register with the government, that's where we draw the line and say, We will, however, ask you to make reservations. And that's the only reason we're doing this, is because when we set up to have church, we're going to need to know who to prepare for. In other words, if you've got a family of 5, we need to have 5 chairs with your name on them sitting in a place that's 6 feet away from all the other chairs. So we'll need you to send us an email or some kind of message and tell us, hey, I'm going to come and I've got 3 people or 4 people with me, or I'm coming by myself. And so we'll have to do those things, and we will try our best to have all kinds of sanitation, hand sanitizer, and all that stuff available for you at that time as well. And you'll register with us, and I promise we will not turn that over to the government. It just won't happen. We'll probably have the doors propped open so you don't have to touch any handles. We'll ask everybody to come in, sit with your group, stay with your group. Do not venture into someone else's group. I don't know how many of you have have you visited a jail or a prison? I've watched a lot of videos where pastors are talking about how to reopen, and it reminds me of jail and prison visitation. When you in my life, I've gone to quite a few penal institutions to visit inmates, and it's when I watch these guys walk their church members through, this is what we're going to do, and here are the rules. I'm thinking, man, it's just like a prison visit. It's just like a jail visit. And it'll be a little bit like that. So if you've never visited prison, it'll kind of feel that way in church. If you have, then it'll be familiar and it'll be old hat to you. I really can't tell you all the guidelines because, like I say, I don't know will we be in phase 1, phase 1.5, phase 2. We're going to be watching for that. I think, and I'm a little bit scrambled here trying to make sure I cover all the bases. I think one of the reasons we're going to do our best to get ready to do both simultaneously is because I strongly suspect that, I don't know if I want to use the word strongly suspect. I think there's a real possibility that this is the new normal, and that if the scientists are right, which that's very debatable, they've been wrong about a lot of stuff through this, but if they are right, there should be another huge spike a little bit later, maybe later in the summer, I don't know. But then they say that toward the end of the year, when the weather gets cold, there will be a huge spike. So we're going to try to put ourselves in a position that at any moment when there's a spike and we have to go back in quarantine, that we'll just be ready to go. We'll just say, okay, everything's online this week, so everybody step back. And so, I mean, this may be the new normal. We're in and we're out, but I'm hoping that we're in a whole lot more than we're out. So we'll be ready to revert back. Now for the question you've all been asking, and again, I talked a whole lot Thursday night with the board about this, and have discussed it some with others. We're going to target June the 7th as our date, our first service back into the sanctuary, with whatever guidelines are being called upon by the authorities at that point. And I know that some churches are already gearing up and taking off, but again, I feel like we, out of an abundance of caution and prudence and stewardship, we're going to hang back just a little bit. We're going to get past the Memorial Day weekend and all that. We're going to watch and see as people come out of quarantine just how rough is that. And just to be honest with you, and maybe we should have been working on this already, but we didn't. Like I say, I entered this week sort of saying we just can't do both, and the board changed my mind this week. So in the meantime, we're going to be working very hard to get the technology installed so that we can be online and live. Because again, this is where the community comes in. If you're all anxious to get back in church like we all are, please remember that there's older folks that we've got to find a way to make sure they get to participate in church. And if you have toddlers, but it may not be feasible for you to be in the building if they're really strong-willed and rambunctious. That may be a real problem for parents. So give us a little bit more time. Is what I'm asking for. Pray for us. Pray that this technology, I'm telling you, Richard Michael and Pastor Dustin are going to pray a lot this week, because I know what it is to be trying to install technology, and you'll put it all together, and then you'll just step back and say, oh God, please let it work, and please let it do well. And so we pray with them. We agree with them that all the technology comes together. So we're going to take some time right immediately. I'm starting immediately to fire up our technology and get us ready to do a high quality, a very good quality online stream of our services before we shift that way a whole lot. So remember, June the 7th, I was asked to have you kind of warn you, if you have been at home watching church, you can control the volume. When you first get back in the building, you may have to throw something at the sound guy, because it may pop your head, after having your own TV remote where you can adjust the volume. You'll be back at the mercy of whatever the sound guy wants to do. So we have been talked about that to try and make sure that we don't just blow you out. So how shall I summarize this? I don't think we're going back to normal anytime real soon. Hey, I couldn't end like that. Had a battery go dead. Sorry about that. I should have been paying more attention. Anyway, I hope that you got everything. We'll launch June the 7th. Parallel services online and in live there in the sanctuary at Relevant Church. One last thing, don't forget, if you are a part of Relevant Church, if you're a part of our church family, and you still have your job, you still have your income, don't forget to support your church financially. We're all in this together, and your church still has its normal financial obligations. The bills are all coming due, and that hasn't changed during a pandemic. So if you still got your income, if the Lord has graciously helped you to keep your income, don't forget to support the church. Your faithful support keeps us going as it always has. We're still supporting missionaries all over the world. We're trying to help in the community through Love Incorporated. We're just, obviously got our payroll, utilities, everything going on. So don't forget to continue to support your church financially so that together we can do that. Don't forget, love you so much. Can't wait to see you. And we'll be back with you just as soon as possible. God bless, and have a good day, good night, whatever time of day you're watching this. Don't forget, love you. Bye.